Hey everyone, I'm going to talk about Teacher Desmos and how you can use it. So, Desmos itself is a graphing calculator tool. Um, we actually adopted it for milestones, but what we're going to be talking about today is not the graphing tool itself, but Teacher Desmos, which is sort of a learning platform that is designed for mathematics, but there's a lot of features that I think can be used across different disciplines. So if I go to teacher.desmos.com, I'm already signed in, but you can sign in with Google. And where I would go is custom because that's what lets you make your own. Now I've already made a ton of these. So I'm going to open one of them up. And here it says create class code. I'm going to open up my dashboard. I'm going a little bit quickly because you're able to pause and rewind this. So this is where students would actually go. They'd go to student.desmos.com. So I'm going to open an incognito window and I'm going to pretend to be a student. So you can see what they see as well as what the teacher sees. And so I'm going to steal that code, R5G 8RK3. I think I forgot it. Let's see. Yep, 8K3. Got it. All right, I can either sign in with Google myself, or if I do continue without signing in, then I can type whatever as my name. Right now, I could have had more of like a starter page, but I'm going to just kind of jump into it. This is a card sort, and there's actually quite a bit going on. This is actually our instructional framework. So it kind of works nicely. So if I look, makes data decisions, data-driven decisions, that would go with assessment. And then if that's taking up too much space, I can kind of close it. Encourages student discourse, critical listening, monitors aggressively, that should go with work session. And what's nice about this is you can actually, like right now I'm pairing them off. But let's just say, I'm gonna save myself some time. Let's just say I'm getting these correct, which I'm not. But these piles might not actually be the same amount. In our framework, there's actually more bullet points in some than others. So let's see, that's where I'm at. Now I'm gonna go to the teacher dashboard to see what a teacher would see. All right, I can see that I have one student in here. I'm able to make that student anonymous. It'll always pick a mathematician's name, so it'll turn everyone's name to a mathematician name. I can freeze a screen so I can just pause it, but I can also do pacing where I can say, hey, everyone's going to be on screen 4. And if I want to start moving people, right, I can move the whole class with me. Right, I can do snapshots. So when there's questions where students are entering answers, I can actually take screen grabs and I can order those screen grabs so that I can talk about them in a very specific order. In math ed research, that comes from the 5 practices for orchestrating a discussion, and 2 of those practices are selecting what students say and sequencing them. So it kind of vibes well with math research, but I'm sure orchestrating a discussion in other fields would probably, this would still be a useful feature. I'm going to turn that pacing off. And that's what summary looks like. Teacher side of it, this is really cool for, again, if I had multiple students, I can see that, well, I got 2 that are correct and there's 3 missing in the deck that I got correct. I got a deck of 4 and they're incorrect, deck of 3 that's paired incorrectly. You can see a lot of information about this student. Now, a lot of times students want to see this information. So when I was in person or in a Zoom session, you'd have to screen share. You could show them this dashboard, or you could all be face to face and you're just looking at the dashboard. But then they'd be able to see what they're looking at. And then I can look, it kind of says most incorrect groups, most common incorrect cards, gives us a lot of information about the that particular card sort. And they're actually pretty easy to make. So what I'm going to do in another window, I'll just show you what it looks like to make a card sort. Because I think, and why I started off with the card sort is most of you guys either use Google Slides or something for card sort. So if you use Teacher Desmos for nothing else, I think a card sort might be the number one used feature for someone that's non-math. So I'm going to actually look at this one that I created. And all it took was, so they have 3 different types. You can either just type text, which all I did was copy and paste text from the framework. But for math specific, I can make a graph, but you can also upload an image. So if I click this, I can add an image from my computer. And so you can actually use an image as a card, which could be useful for different things. I imagine maybe social studies, it might be helpful, and art, uh, world languages. Imagine just trying to get association to a picture rather than the translation, although you could do a card sort where it's in English, in Spanish, and a picture. But there's a lot of flexibility and it's really easy to make. So if I just needed to make another card, I just press that. I can type whatever I need to. If I need an image, again, I'll just press that. So it's very easy to make. Right, now I'm going to go back to what a student would see. So let's say I finished my card sort. I'm going to go to the next one. All right, so identify the picture that matches the verb correr. So that would be to run. So I would click that. And you can toggle this on or off, but I can have them explaining. This is a picture of a man running. Quick share with class. And then, again, I'll show you what it looks like on the teacher side of things. Right? I still get that kind of poll information of who's picking what. I can also see explanations. This little picture icon, say I really like someone's explanation, I can click that icon and that goes straight to my snapshots. Right? So that's me kind of looking at the discussion that's happening virtually, and I can create snapshots so that I can facilitate a discussion later based on what students are answering. Summary view, again, is just going to show me where the different students are. Student view lets me pretend to be the student. So even though I'm doing it on that separate tab for a reason, you could always simulate being a student from the dashboard. Right? And then again, we'll look at, well, how is that built? So most of these, you can see, you can basically pick any of these components and pair them together however you wish. This is just a multiple choice component. And when I was making a multiple choice question, right, I can keep adding, like this could be the 5th option. Or the way I did it was I just clicked and I was adding a picture. So 4 pictures. If I want a note alongside this, I can add a note component. All right. You like, I have this question, but I could have notes over here. Or I could write a question here if needed. And that would just pop up like that. It's pretty friendly. There's also multi-select. So again, we'll go back to the student view. All right. This is one of their features where you can order something. So you can get them to sort something least to greatest, which again is beneficial in math. But first thing I thought of for a non-math subject would be something where it's like a timeline. So I could have an answer key and I want them to sort out, well, what came first, what came after, and they can kind of mess around with it. I don't even know if I'm right, but something like that. Sure, if you're a social studies teacher watching, you can tell me if I did that right or not. But again, I can look on what would that look like. From this perspective, I can see all the different orderings, and again, I can snapshot different ones if I wanted to see it. And then this view would kind of show you an overlay if you had multiple students, kind of how they ordered things. But since there's only one me, this is showing like what percentage of people put this first, what percentage of people, but since there's only one student in their class, I can't quite show you what that looks like. But again, that's pretty easy to make. That just comes from this ordering list, and then I just wrote a bunch of different things in the list. All right, so this comes from me Googling a fine arts question. All right, I got an image, just a typical multiple choice. And again, that would be function like the other multiple choice question. I just didn't add words as answer choices. All right, you can also have multi-select. So if I was in health, I still remember quite a things like the rice method and brat diet from health. So if your stomach is upset, it's not feeling well, sometimes you might think the B is for bread, but it's actually bananas, rice, applesauce, and toast. Help you get your gut health back to where it is, where you're feeling a little bit better. So you could have multi-select. And again, we can look at what would a teacher see. All right, you can see who's picking what. And again, if you had a whole class, you'd get an idea of exactly what they're picking. There's ways to, if you're more advanced, and I've done a lot with this program in particular, they have their own coding language. So they do actually let you in the computation layer and write code. It's not Java. It's literally a code that they wrote. If you go to this question mark, it tells you about it. So there are more things you could do with it, like actually make this like a self-grading assignment or something. But really, this is meant for synchronous or asynchronous. There's a few other things it can do I'll show you in a second. But being able to see this dashboard and all the kids' different work, that's kind of permanent. I have access to different Desmos activities I did like 4 or 5 years ago, and I can still look at student work from back when I used to teach. So if another person, like if you're watching this video, I probably should have went back and said, if you're watching this video, you could actually enter this activity along with me. And if I ever look back at it, I can see who else came in and did this and messed around with these questions. So when I send this out as an email, I'll tell you, hey, you can actually enter in that code and go along with the activity. Some other things that are useful. So I'm going to have a math specific one, so I'm not going to talk about these, but these are basically math specific in terms of graphing, although, well, graphing and geometry is, buttons requires being able to do a little bit of the programming, so I'm going to ignore these three. I've already talked about, so this is a note basically writing some sort of description. Text input is just so that kids can write in text. Probably won't need math input. We've looked at these three. Having a media slide, you can do an image or video. You can't like just embed a YouTube video upright. But what you could do, if I had some YouTube video, let's see what comes up. You can see between me being an Eagles fan and having a small child, I have a bunch of little kid shows. Made out of a special popsicle freezing liquid. So if I wanted that YouTube video, maybe I don't actually download it and put it in there. I can put it in as a note. So you can actually hyperlink in this platform. So I couldn't necessarily embed that without downloading the video itself, but I could hyperlink anything I need to hyperlink. Using Sketch is useful because you can think of a sketch as really a set of dry erase boards, right? They can sketch and write on this. Right, and from the perspective of the teacher, which this is no longer live, but if I had this already built into the slide, I would see kind of, I could look at the teacher view and I can see all the different sketches at the same time. Table, you can put text or numbers in. That could be useful in a lot of different courses. So that's kind of the short and sweet version. I will show you real quickly something I put together using Mr. Gonzalez's zoology. So I just picked apart. He shared a Google Doc in a CER activity that he used. And I just took what he had and made it its own activity. So I'll just go through the student preview. But all right, so it was on sharks, and essentially he had it broken down where you'd have a paragraph or two and then write a sentence that's the main idea for the paragraphs. And that process continued. So I'm going to write some sentences. This is idea number 1. Okay. And then I have a second sentence for the next paragraph. And you can see in this one, I actually did hyperlink because he had a hyperlink to another article. I hyperlinked that in as well. Okay, now I can try to have multiple responses in here. Now I'm getting lazier. I can continue that process. And the reason I'm doing that is what he would have them do is then write all of those sentences together and look to edit them. And I had it where everything I was typing is basically forming a paragraph. So they could already just edit what they already have written from writing those previous slides. Which for those of you doing like focus note taking and close reading, it could be useful. And this wasn't too hard. This did require going into the computation layer, but I'll show you real quickly. That wasn't a difficult one to do. It just requires naming each component. So all I did was write, this is input 1 for the student's input, input 2. You can name it whatever you wanted. And when I got to here, I just wrote that the initial text should be the content of input 1, then the content of input 2, et cetera, to input 9, and that just collected all of those responses in one. I know AMDM was at the presentation earlier today, and they're planning on using this maybe instead of, say, a Google Slides. So there's definitely a lot of flexibility, and it kind of functions similar to like maybe a Pear Deck. No, we kind of have way too many tools at this point, but this is something that I'm intimately familiar with. I've actually have quite a bit experience creating and coding within this, so maybe even in computer science this could be useful. Although it's not an official coding language, it still is a practice in coding. It's just for these slides in particular. Hopefully this was useful and you're able to pause, rewind. You can always ask me questions. If it's something you or your content team or your department is interested in, and you want me to gear something specifically to your department or to collaborate with you, just shoot me an email. I hope this was helpful.